All right, great to see everyone this morning. So my role, just to pick up on a couple of Jonathan's comments, the inspiration for first the Branded Residence Forum in Dubai and today's masterclass and then next month's Branded Residence Forum in Asia really is that as attendees from Demetrius to Daniel to Rico and those of us that have had the opportunity over the years to attend these types of sessions, we saw a couple of great examples of some very, very interesting sessions. Jerry and Nick's session yesterday, the session that Daniel was on with Julian from Marriott, where they dug into a number of key issues. But sometimes what we see is that we're sort of skimming across the top of the issues and we get to some of the key questions, but we don't necessarily get to the drivers that really enable investors, operators, advisors, consultants, collaborators to really drive the success of the project. So the next 2.5 hours are really to facilitate that deeper dive. My role this morning is really to tee things up. I'm going to go through some key concepts and some refreshers. We're going to take a look at where the industry is globally. We're going to dig a little bit more deeply into Saudi Arabia, but then I'm really going to hand it over to the experts that'll take a look at, in terms of branded residences, how do they drive value for stakeholders? Branded residences, how do they need to be structured properly from a legal perspective? And then the sales and marketers will take over to really look at the key success drivers in terms of actually selling these residences and achieving the type of premiums that the brands promise. So gathered in this room and in the Branded Residence Forums in Dubai and in Asia next month are really the key collaborators that make these projects successful and possible and viable in the first rate. It's about investors, designers and architects, the legal advisors, the sales and marketing professionals, of course the operators, in some cases the fashion houses and the automotive brands, the consultants and many advisors, the data market, the market insights providers like Rico at Savills, and of course the sponsors that make an event like this possible. All of those collaborators are required really, and it's that cross-functional expertise that's required to make a branded residence project successful. So in terms of setting the stage, as I said, I'll take a look at some of the key concepts and a little bit of a look in terms of the market both globally in Saudi Arabia. There's a really interesting story to dig into there. We'll take a look at branded residences from stakeholder perspectives. Then Rhonda Hare will lead us with a session that looks at the structuring of branded residential projects to make sure, first and foremost, that the investors in these projects and their hotel assets are protected, but also to make sure that the offerings are appealing to consumers and, of course, protective of the brands that license themselves to these projects. Selimir Yip will then take a look at marketing projects into offshore markets and in particularly to mainland Chinese markets. And then Jade Hall will lead a panel that will dig more deeply into what it takes to successfully market a branded residential project, and that's the Brand Advantage session to wrap things up. So a lot to cover. So again, as promised, some key concepts. So especially when we're talking about branded residences at a hospitality investment forum, it's really important to make sure that we set the context because there's a lot of products that can be confused and that have some relevancy and crossover with branded residences. So today we're not focused on extended stay hotel, we're not focused on service apartments or service residences, we're really focused on the category of branded residences. That's a private residence that can be purchased by an individual purchaser, either as a primary residence or a second home that's developed, marketed, and sold under a license agreement. Very often with the requirement that it be operated to the standards of that brand. And it can take the form of a villa, an apartment, or a chalet. Typically, branded residence projects feature very extensive services and amenities and facilities. And we see in this space not only the hospitality brands, but also automotive, fashion, and food and beverage brands. And we'll dig more deeply in terms of how that branding is segmented in a few moments. So as Jonathan was touching on, branded residences take several forms. Most commonly, they're co-located with hotels. So in a very significant case, it's a mixed-use development anchored by a hotel or resort with a co-located set of branded residences beside it. Standalone branded residences, though, are becoming increasingly common. You may have heard some of Nick's comments about standalone branded residences. I think those of us who were there, I probably could put some words in the mouth of Julian and Marion. I know Daniel would agree with me on this point. There's a lot that you need to do when you're looking at a standalone branded residence to get it right, to really make sure the brand does come to life. So there's some risk in standalone, but I think what we've seen over the last several years is that standalone's really taken off. And I think brands are now thinking very, very carefully in a standalone context in terms of how to bring the brand to life, how to layer in the right amenities and facilities. And I think the panels that follow this session will dig more deeply into those opportunities. We also see private residence clubs or fractional projects, and we do see strata hotel and condo hotel projects, and Demetris at Wyndham knows a little bit about that because Wyndham's quite involved in that space. In terms of roles and responsibilities in branded residential projects, the developer is responsible first and foremost for the financing and the development of the project, for the creation of the governing documents, and for the sales and marketing. Of course, the developer role is greater than that, but those are probably the three key bullet points to keep in mind. The brand grants the license, it provides the standards, and it provides the immersion training to help bring the brand to life in the sales and marketing process. Now, the brand may also manage, franchise, provide rental programs, support lead generation, and HOA administration. But I think from investor perspectives, those are the issues that you really want to do due diligence on. Typically in the hospitality segment, when you're looking at a hospitality brand that's licensing itself to a branded residence, in that context, so I'll just move my mic a little bit, in that context, it's more common to see the hospitality company extend its role into the operating phase and really bring the brand to life from an operating perspective. But it's not always the case. And so those are the issues that investors really need to dig into and understand. From a stakeholder perspective, and this is the panel that Rico and Daniel and their participants will dig more deeply into, Imran from Diriyah Gate, et cetera. From a purchaser perspective, the brand, first and foremost, is resonating. Purchasers are buying these projects because they find the brand compelling. It really resonates with them personally. The brands also deliver very much an elevated level of service and a modern lifestyle and peace of mind. And if you think about the iconic real estate assets that are typically following under these brand portfolios, some of the most iconic real estate assets in the world, products like Raffles Singapore, the Faubourg in Paris, the Plaza in New York, these are the type of assets that when a purchaser looks at a brand that's entrusted with safeguarding an asset like that, it's easy to imagine that that same brand can be trusted to safeguard and to continue to elevate the service and experience that they enjoy as a homeowner in their residence for years to come. From a hotel investor perspective, it is about brand premium. We'll talk more about that in a moment. It's about absorption and differentiation, and enhanced hotel economics. And it's also about, I can see here that I've got 2 minutes, but I think I've got more than that, I hope. It's also about differentiation and enhanced economics. When you take a brand and you carry it across both a hotel asset and a branded residence asset, you're able to share expenses from the hotel, overheads, amenities, and facilities, and drive efficiency. And from an operator perspective, this is really a wonderful canvas on which to evolve and tell our brand story, to build a deeper relationship with brand ambassadors and to create value. Brand premium, and this is something that we'll dig into more deeply in the next panel, I'm sure, but it's really about the achieved pricing premium that a developer can achieve by licensing a brand compared to an independently branded product with similar spec and similar location. So it is literally the premium on an achieved pricing basis per square foot or per square meter realized by the developer. And there are a number of great firms, including Savills Global Development Consultancy, led by Rico, Global Branded Residences, WATG, Knight Frank, and others, who have done a lot of great work into these premium studies. So when you see the brands referencing their premiums, they're very typically referencing third-party studies. And when you hear that the average is north of 30% worldwide, globally, year in, year out, that is again measured by those same firms. There's a very delicate balance to achieve when designing branded residences. On the one hand, when we do co-locate these products with hotels, which is 90% of the time, of course that very modern lifestyle, that service that's on demand 24/7, is very important to homeowners, but so too is this notion of a private home exclusivity. So we design these properties so that they're integrated, but the homeowner experiences and private amenities are separate. The access to the hotel is discrete, and that also takes shape in terms of service. It's service that's intuitive, that has to understand that a homeowner is enjoying their private home. It's a different type of service than the service that we curate for the guests of our hotels and resorts. Now, as promised, a market perspective, we'll go through this pretty quickly because the subsequent panels will dig into it a little bit more deeply. There are now nearly 800 branded residence projects operating worldwide. There are 912 that are under development. This is global. 79% of those are hospitality brands, and I think some of us in the room would argue that the hospitality brands really have a competitive advantage. They're able to take a set of brand promises and the brand itself and articulate what that brand means in the operating phase from a residential experience and a servicing perspective. And then with the right platform, they're able to then deliver and make good on those promises in the operating segment. It's a space that's growing phenomenally fast rate, 13% compound annual growth rate over the last 23 years. As I said, the premiums have consistently averaged north of 30%, and there are now 260,000 branded homes that are branded and operated worldwide. As you can see, just about every leading operator is in this space. Marriott and Accor are the leaders worldwide, but you can see that to be competitive as an operator and to make sure you're able to not only address the needs of hospitality investors' hotel assets, it's really, really important that you're fluent and able to deliver against the needs of residential developers who are looking to brand and co-locate their residences alongside the hotels that they're integrating into mixed-use resorts. Historically, and this is a space that's 25 years old, branded residences isn't new. It's a space that's been around for 25, 30 years. It really started as a luxury show. Luxury is still incredibly important to branded residences and a key driver of growth, but is no longer the exclusive domain of luxury. We're seeing significant premium participation from premium brands, upper upscale brands, even mid-scale brands. In fact, we launched our first Novotel residences here in Saudi Arabia in Mecca last year. It opened rather last year. In terms of segmentation, you can see the classic hospitality brands still really dominate the space, 67%. You can see over on the right, there's an important role that's being played by the design, the fashion, and the automotive brands. And then emerging up the middle is a new category of branded offering. Lifestyle and leisure brands. It's now 12%, but that segment wouldn't have been on the radar at all 5 years. This is a really, really important trend, and we'll talk in a few moments about how those brands are helping developers target new demographics and psychographics of buyers. Branded residence, as I said, started 25 years ago. It was really an Americas and then a Western Europe phenomenon. Increasingly, the pole or the gravitational center of all that activity is really shifted to the Middle East, to Africa, and to Asia. And as you'll see in the next slide, markets like the UAE and even Saudi Arabia have become increasingly important. Now, in terms of Saudi Arabia, if we went back, if we rolled the clock back to 2015, about 10 years ago, Saudi Arabia really wasn't on the map. The first project was launched in Saudi Arabia in 2015. Flash forward to today, there's now 6 branded residence projects operating in Saudi Arabia. There are 40 that are under development. About 18% of those are standalone. So that standalone phenomenon that we discussed is already established and in motion in Saudi Arabia. And about 80%, nearly 80% of those are hospitality branded. Now, what's driving all this growth? From a consumer perspective, it's really consumers who are seeking originality, inspired stories, and authenticity. And I think that's what's driven, and I see JD here from a Marriott perspective, I think JD would agree. What that is then doing in turn is it's encouraging operators like Marriott, Accor, Wyndham, and others to introduce new brands. And there are significantly more brands on offer now to investors enabling them to target new demographics and new psychographics. Quite literally, the lifestyle brands that we see participating in this space, brands like W, brands like SLS, brands like Mondrian, are helping buyers target a demographic and a psychographic that historically might not have been drawn in. Younger buyers who are looking for a more youthful, more energetic product. In turn, this is putting onus on the operators to develop more complete turnkey platforms that really enable developers to get to market more predictably and more reliably with a platform that supports not only the development phase of these projects, but also the operating phase. And so very, very quickly, before I hand over a quick introduction to Accor One Living, ourselves, we've been in this space now for about 25 years. What we've done more recently is we've taken the expertise that we've acquired in developing and operating branded residences for the last 25 years, and we pulled that into a single organization. An organization called Accor One Living that's focused on the development and the operation of branded residences. So the role that we play with our investment partners is to work with them, of course, during the initial stages to get the right commercial foundation in place, through planning, through design, through sales and marketing to the last phase, through the legal structuring of these projects, but ultimately into the operating phase, so that we really can make sure that the promises that our partners are making at the front end, at the sales tables, are being delivered on in the operating phase. So we're happy to say we're now the number 2 in this space. We have 25 of our 51 brands on offer to our residential development partners. Last year, we helped our partners sell approximately $2 billion in residential real estate brands, and we look after 8,000 homes worldwide that are branded. And we're fortunate, of course, that we have within our portfolio some of the pioneering brands like Fairmont and Raffles, that alongside brands like Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons helped to pioneer the space. Brands like SLS, which is now the fastest growing lifestyle brand in the branded residential segment, but also some very, very exciting innovators. Brands like Sofitel, Pullman, Hyde, Mondrian, 25 Hours. Brands that are really helping investors target new demographics and new psychographics. And so with that, and as a final note, just to tee things up for the panels, we see a number of keys to success. These keys to success are really the keys that the panels that follow my presentation will dig more deeply into. We see market-driven design as being really key. Really making sure we know who the target buyer is for these residences, understand the amenities and the facilities that they'll be seeking, how they'll use the home, making sure the unit mix is right, making sure that the sizes and the features of the offering are right. So really market-driven design. Structuring these projects is critical, and Rhonda's panel will dig more deeply into that. And structuring it is really first and foremost making sure that the governing documents and the legal structure of the project, particularly in a mixed-use development, protect the asset owner, the investor in the project. Then, in turn, making sure that it works and is appealing to a consumer. And then finally, really in that order, protecting the brand. And then finally, differentiation and demand. And both Sally's and Jade's discussions will dig more deeply into the factors that drive the success in sales and marketing of branded residences. So on a final note, a big thank you to Jonathan and the team at the bench for making this session possible. Real pleasure to spend 10 or 15 minutes with you this morning, and we look forward to the discussions that follow. Thank you.